everybody, Christopher Hart here with Transforming Lives Coaching and Consulting, your coach and consultant in the world of organizational and leadership development, as well as the psychology of success through peak performance. And welcome to our Leadership Lead Strong video series, where we work to increase the influence and impact in leaders in the environments in which they lead and operate in. And so, welcome to today's video. We're titling it, How to Responsibly Overcome Your Two Greatest Leadership Challenges. So a couple key words I want you guys to focus in on. Responsibly, how to responsibly overcome these two greatest leadership challenges. So first and foremost, we have to define what are those two greatest leadership challenges. And quite frankly, I believe your two greatest leadership challenges are hiring and firing. And I believe if you've led in any sort of environment, whether you're a startup trying to transition to having some leverage within your business, whether you consider it leverage, assistance, whatever, or you've led at a high level, you understand that hiring the right people for the job that you're looking to attract to is quite a challenge, right? Like, yeah, we can hire anyone, but that's not responsible. That's not taking the responsible route. And then, we find that we may have hired some people that didn't pan out, or, they looked a lot better in the hiring process than how they're showing up day in and day out. And it's time to let them go, right? It's time to set them free back into free agency of the industry or job world that they're currently operating in. And what I find is there's a lot of ways that leaders take in the firing process, but once again, they don't do it responsibly. Okay, so we're going to break this down today, and hopefully we bring some value to not just your business and your organizational life as a leader, but as well as your personal life. So let's look at this. Let's look at the hiring process. Actually, let's take a step back and let's kind of look at it as an overview and look at the responsible process. The responsible process is defined by the logical process. You see, I believe, and we've done a video on this, and we'll post the link to that video in the comments below here a little bit later. I did a video on how leadership is a logical process, or it's an emotional process driven by logic. What does that mean? Leadership is influence. John Maxwell says that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so what are we influencing? We're influencing emotions. Why? Through the psychology of success, what we understand is logic makes them think, emotions make them act, right? Let's say that again. Logic makes them think. It gets people thinking. Emotions make people act. So if influence is defined by the power to affect someone's character or actions, actions are driven by what? Emotions. Okay? So leadership is an emotional process. It's a process by which we influence emotions to get people into action, because psychology tells us logic gets them thinking, emotion gets them acting. Okay? So it's an emotional process driven by logic. So what does that mean? You as leaders need to have a responsible, logical process by which you hire people and you fire people. And how are most leaders showing up? They're showing up in emotional process. Yeah, an emotional process driven by emotions, right? What does that look like in the hiring process? Many leaders are out there, they'll do a interview process. So they'll put an ad out there, marketing, they'll talk to their friends and they'll say, oh, I got a great friend that's looking for a job. Okay, well, here's the thing. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I could probably do a whole separate video on that. But typically how leaders handle the hiring process is they'll interview 2, 3, maybe 4 people, and then they'll fall in love with 3 out of the 4 or 2 out of the 3, and then they'll hire the one they like the most, right? No logical process whatsoever. It's strictly emotional. Sometimes you'll hire the first person that you interview. Why? Because their whole job is to influence you. To make you believe they're the next greatest thing since the creation of bread. And you fall in love with them. And because you don't have a logical process to evaluate against, you're like, oh, I love this person, they're the greatest, when can you start? And you take that process because you're in an emotional state, you're in pain. Most leaders wait until they absolutely need someone before they hire. And so they're in a pain state, which is emotion, right? So we have an emotional process driven by emotion. And then you engage in the hiring process, and you may have you definitely have one step, right? You have one interview. You may have a follow-up. Most don't even have a third follow-up. And so what happens is in those 1 to 2 step hiring processes that you have, you fall in love with them because their whole job is to influence your emotions. And then you fall in love, which is another emotion, right? An emotional process driven by emotion. And you have no logic to get you thinking to say, is this person really the right person? We've done a video on this, right? We'll post this one in the links too, or in the comments below. That what do we hire to? We hire to 3 matches. Are they a match for the role? Are they a match for the organization and your culture? And they are a match for your leadership. See, that's a logical process, because when you understand that, then you understand that you have some criteria that defines how is this person a match for the role? What's their experience? What's their personality assessment? What's their behavioral assessment? What are their skill sets? What are the results that show up? Prime example, last night was round 1 of the NFL draft, and they talk a lot about predictive analytics, right? Like you have game film that you can analyze these people, how they show up, and yet they still go to the Combine, that was a different thing. They go to the Combine and they have all these assessments, and then people are evaluated by their assessments, and then you hear everybody talking, the analysts last night go, oh, he runs a 4.2 40, like we're supposed to be impressed by that. It's logic, right? So they have a hiring process. They have a process by which they're going to recruit to their organization driven by logic. Why? So they don't fall in love with someone. So it's not an emotional process driven by emotion. It's an emotional process driven by logic. There's some very strict criteria that they're evaluating against, which in essence is a scorecard. You define that scorecard when you're not in an emotional state. You say, this is the person that's an ideal candidate for the role. This is a person that's an ideal candidate for my organization based off of our culture, our predefined culture, not people-defined culture. That's another video coming up, by the way. And then this is the process that I define as a match to my leadership based off of my leadership personality. You have all 3 of those criterias on a scorecard, and then you engage in the recruiting and selecting process, and then you have your interviews, and you have multiple step interviews to evaluate as much data as you need to determine whether or not they're a match for your scorecard in those 3 critical areas. And then what I would tell you is to responsibly evaluate, have an evaluation process that determines how much of a match are they. You see, there are people that will say, oh, coach, this person's a match. Well, how much of a match? How much criteria have you predefined, and how much of that criteria are they a match for? Are they a 60% match? Are they a 100% match? Because here's what I'll tell you. Someone who's a 60% match on your predefined criteria, not just one assessment like a personality or a behavioral assessment. Oh, they're an 85% match on the behavior assessment I gave them. I'm hiring them. That's not responsible. Okay? So the responsible process of hiring is understanding that this is an emotional process. This is a process by which your job is to sell them, their job is to sell you. It's a sale going on. It's an influence of emotions. The emotional process has to be driven by logic. When it's driven by logic, by having those 3 critical areas we defined, match for the role, match for the organization, and match for your leadership, and then you have the very specific criteria that defines exactly what a perfect match, or as close to a match that you're looking for, looks like, and then you evaluate against that. That's being a responsible leader. Leaders, I'll tell you right now, if you're out there, what I like to call shotgun hiring, right? 1 shot, 1 kill, right? You just bird shot spray, like bullets flying, projectiles flying everywhere. Oh, I got someone, boom, bring them in. You hired by pain. Pain's an emotional process. You hired because you fell in love with them. That's an emotional process. That's irresponsible. You don't hire because you fall in love with them. You hire them because you fell in love with the criteria you created first before you ever spoke to someone. And then that person matches or is a close match, as close of a match as possible to that criteria. Then and only then do I believe you have the right to fall in love and hire someone. Okay, so that's the hiring process. Emotional process driven by logic. The logic is we predefine what the fall in love phase is, which is if this person shows up, I'm in love. If this person doesn't show up, not so much in love. I may really like the person, and it's okay to really like them, but it's not okay to hire them. Okay, so that's a responsible process. Fall in love with criteria. I fell in love with that woman right there. That's my wife. I love her to death. Thank you so much for showing up on our videos, love. So let's look at the firing process. I think this one's probably the more critical one. I think this really defines leadership, right? Some people out there, I've heard Gary Keller. You hear me talk a lot about Gary Keller. I really love this guy. I think he's an absolute genius. I've studied him. He's built the #1 real estate franchise by agents' choice to align with. So, I like to study success, and he's successful. So I speak a lot about him in just kind of reverence of him to understand that he's a great business person. And I heard him say one time that don't judge me by who I hire, judge me by who I fire, right? And so he has this ideology about hiring and firing process where he says hire slow, which is because you have to go through a very detailed hiring process to evaluate someone to the fullest extent to extrapolate all the criteria you need to evaluate against your perfect match. Hire slow, fire fast. Now, two things we're going to look at is as far as the irresponsibility and the responsibility of a leader in the firing process. One, people hold on to individuals underperforming or non-matches in their organization longer than they should. Why? Pain. Once again, emotion. They hold on to them because of pain. They're like, oh man, if I fire them, then I got to go back into that hiring process, and that took long, and I don't have any candidates on my bench, and blah blah blah. So their hope, their whole foundation of leadership is built on hope. I hope this person changes, right? Or I'm going to try and fix this person. Like all of a sudden you're in the business of fixing people. You're not God. You're a leader. Okay. Your job is to hire the right people, fire the ones that aren't matches, right? I don't want to say right or wrong. Hire the closest match. Keep the matches, raise your leadership lid to keep those match people, the ones that you're ultimately looking for, to keep them in your organization, and let go of the people that are not a match to the role, organization, and your leadership. So the first thing that most leaders do that's irresponsible is they keep people longer than they should. They hire fast and fire slow. And Gary tells us to hire slow, fire quickly. Okay, so right there can help us transition and increase our leadership capacity just by reversing how we're operating. Operating in an emotional process driven by logic, not emotion by emotion. Okay? And then hire slow, fire quickly. Now, when we look at firing quickly, how do we evaluate whether or not we should fire someone quickly? Guess what? By the criteria that you defined before you even hired them. Okay? That criteria, are they still showing up as a match for the role? Are they still showing up as a match for your organization? Are they still showing up as a match for your leadership? The second they are not, you need to start, listen to me, you need to start having a conversation with them. Because the second most irresponsible thing I believe all leaders do is they fire people and people go, I just got fired. What the hell did I get fired for? They have no idea that they were even doing something wrong. Leaders, if you're not having conversations where people are not meeting your expectations and you fire them and they walk out of there like baffled, that's a leadership fail. That's on you. You failed to have a conversation. Failure to have a conversation is a failure in your leadership. And it's not, well, I'll wait a couple days to have a conversation. No, you have the conversation in the moment. And if your emotions are too high to have it in the moment, then you have it when you calm your emotions down. That's called EQ, your ability, your quotient to measure your emotions and how you control them. Control your emotions, calm them down, and then have the conversation as quickly as possible. And so I believe there should be a lead-up process, right? Like, hey, you're not meeting expectations. Remember all this criteria we defined, right? And the results that we're holding you accountable, you're not meeting them. I'm going to give you a second chance. and I'm going to hold you accountable, and there's going to be a time frame by which you're going to accomplish this. Failure to do so, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to tell you, well, you're probably going to have to let me go. Okay, what's that conversation going to sound like? That if you don't show up in this time period, meeting this particular criteria, results and expectations, predefined, then what's the conversation going to sound like? It's going to sound like, well, hey, Bill, sorry, but things aren't working out and we have to part ways. So there's going to be no surprises, right? Nope, there shouldn't be. Okay. See, I believe a responsible process is there's a lead up phase. And you're probably saying, well, Chris, that's not firing slowly or quickly. I believe it is, right? You give people a second chance to step up to be the person that you thought they were in the hiring process. And you have that conversation because it's responsible to give people a second chance, because that's just what we should be doing in life. That's what Jesus does for us. That's what I believe we should do for all people, definitely in business. But if they choose not to take that second chance for their benefit, then yes, it's time to let them go. But the key thing I want you to take from this, guys, is that the conversations need to be had so that when it's the final conversation, there's no surprises. That person should walk into work that morning knowing they're going to be held accountable to a result. They should have measured the activities and result, and they should quite frankly wake up that morning going, I'm going to be fired today. I'm going to put my suit and tie on, I'm going to put my shirt on, I'm going to shave, brush my teeth, look pretty, do my hair, but I know I'm going in just to get fired. And that's okay. Because when you sit down, you go, hey, tell me what the expectation of what we're measuring and holding accountable to. Well, here's the result. All right, what was the goal? Or here was the goal. What was the result? Nah. Okay, what did we say was going to happen in this time period if you fell short of the goal? Well, you were going to have to let me go. All right, what did we predefine that conversation to sound like? Well, Chris, I didn't meet my goal, so it's time to move on. Okay, so are you prepared to move on? Yeah, I guess it kind of sucks. Okay, man, hey, we love you. You're still welcome to come out and visit us, hang out with us, but it's time to move on. You're just not a match for the role of the organization or the leadership because you didn't meet the predefined criteria. That's a logical process. It's a logical process on the hiring side. It's a logical process on the firing side. And leaders, I believe, look, everybody has their model by which they can follow for hiring and firing. But if you don't have one, those are two easy ways how to responsibly overcome your greatest challenge in hiring people and your greatest challenge in firing people. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. But success is simple. It's simple. It's a simple process. Success is simple. It's not easy. If you're trying to serve easy, understand something. You're not trying to be successful. If you're trying to be successful, understand it's not going to be easy. The conversations aren't easy. The process of defining that perfect match is not easy. Holding them accountable is not easy. But that's why we become successful leaders, is because we're willing to fight, not flight. If you want to flight, if you want to run from difficulty, just understand you're choosing easy and comfortable, and that's not where success happens. If you want to be successful, lean in. Be okay with falling short. Some people call it failure. I just call it falling short because that's an opportunity to learn. Rebecca says, yes, it's only fair to give them a chance to correct their course, especially if you once believed they were the right person. Have the hard conversations. Rebecca, once again, dropping fireballs. Okay? Yeah, it's only fair, right? Like, it's a leadership fail if you don't have the conversation, give them a second chance. If you just drop a ball and I'm like, oh, I'm letting you go, you're not meeting expectations. You're firing on emotion. Oh, Gary Keller told me to fire fast. He did, but there's a process. There's a logical process by which that happens. So I think the key of what Rebecca's saying is, especially if you once believed they were the right person. Okay? And they once believed you were the right leader. Are you giving them the second chance? Are you having the conversations with them that inspire and empower them to correct course? Do they understand the ramifications of them hitting their goal and them falling short? Because if they don't and you fire them, boom, big F for your leadership. But if you do, I promise you, you're going to be a great leader. You're going to have massive influence within your people. You'll have massive impact in your people, in your organization, and in the world. So hopefully we brought some value to your business and your life. What I'd love to hear from you guys, two things. One, What are your takeaways and ahas from this? Whether you're watching live, on replay, or on our YouTube channel, feel free to comment below. We'll continue the coaching process through the comments within this video. But secondly, what's your greatest challenge that you think you need to overcome in the logical process of hiring and firing? I'd love to help you out with that. Feel free to share that, and I promise you, my team and I will continue to coach you along the way. Thank you for joining us live. Thank you for watching us on replay. Click the little bell up above. I think it's over here on Facebook, if you're watching this on Facebook, so you can get notified when we go live. If you're watching this on replay on our YouTube channel, like this video, subscribe so that you get notified every day we post our new videos. So thanks for joining us. Remember one thing, God loves you, so do I. Lead strong. Have a powerful rest of your day. Take care.